Hello, everybody watching this video. This is Preston and George. We're talking raw on the chakra. We got a special one today. We got a doozy. I asked the Atmosphere group on Slack if there was any topics they wanted to hear discussed today by the two of us, and sure enough, the homie Morgan, the Morgie Cyborgie, said she wanted to hear about time management and priorities. So we're going to do some of that and we're going to see where it goes too. Um, I mean, to start out, I guess there's a lot of this that goes into life and just recovery. And you and I, George, we have very different perspectives on this because I'm at a place in my life. I'm blessed. And I know you are blessed as well, but I'm blessed to say that I'm a single man. I have no children. And my primary responsibility during the week is my job. That is where I give the most hours. So I have a very different perspective than you on this, but I've found that with my values, my priorities have shifted. And over the past couple of years, I have drastically changed how I do manage my time. And I've come to realize too, this facade and this blockage of people and being busy all the time and how limiting that could be. And I think it's just a mindset that I've been in as well. And yeah, I just like to hear your perspective on this too about time management priorities.
About time and priorities. I know we were going to talk about spirituality. We were going to talk a little bit about probably religion and stuff like that. And I think that as part of, the spiritual aspect of it and the changes that I'm trying to make in my life have really changed my priorities dramatically in life. You're right. I'm married. I've been married for over 30 years. She's a beautiful, awesome lady. She's been amazing at holding her family together through a lot. My kids, I've got four kids, three boys and a daughter. My oldest is getting near 30 years old. He's 28 years old. And so I've got two older kids and I've got two high school age. Well, my daughter's 18 now, graduated last year. My son's graduating this year. So quite a dynamic, and seeing older kids and younger kids and having them with the same wife, and seeing the differences in them, and kind of tracking how my life has gone along the way. So in my journey, as you know, alcohol, we talked about addiction, we talked about those things. Where I kind of come to is that I kind of had a moment in my life where we talk about having a spiritual crisis. You mentioned that on the last podcast. Having that spiritual crisis is something that we all can go through, and when we hit the dark moments in our lives. And, for me, I saw that my family was struggling and that I was struggling. I was at a point in my life where I couldn't drink anymore, and that would normally help me with those moments. The quick fix. Didn't have that anymore. So for me, I was having a spiritual crisis. I didn't know it at the time, but I was like, God, if you are there, I need you now. There's a lot that goes into what was happening around my family and the things that were falling apart in my life. But I was at that point where I was surrendering everything. And that's when I kind of had this shift and this clarity kind of come to me. Now, this is after I quit drinking for almost a year. So I had thought I had been doing well, but that day I kind of had more clarity as to, wow, it all comes back down to me. And I was always shifting the blame externally. It's society's fault, it's the government's fault, it's the school system, it's because people are mean and cruel in this world. did a lot of blaming. I was always watching the news, always, in fear, always blaming society. It was easy, to blame for all of my shit that I was going through. But that day, it came very clear to me that it was me. And also that same day, I felt forgiven at the same time, in the sense that it's not your fault, but it all comes to you. And you've created a toxic environment for your family. You're controlling, you're narcissistic, you're irritated all the time. Maybe it wasn't every day, but it was consistent enough that I saw it, that I was causing my family to not support each other. All of a sudden I realized, and I could see it, my family was in their rooms, they were isolating, they were arguing, they were fighting, they weren't supporting each other. And how did I expect them to change unless I changed? I was the cause of a lot of this. And so to me, I had to take a real hard look at me. And that's where life had changed for me, in stopping blaming the world and society. And I talk about it a lot now. It is what it is. Society is what it is. All of these elements are what they are. But it's my reactions to them that have caused the pain in my family. And so for me, I realized that I didn't spend a lot of time with my family. I didn't spend a lot of that quality time with my family. I was out trying to make money. I was trying to buy them things. I was trying to, what I thought was success. And I realized that I didn't, spend time with my kids in the important ways. Those important ways is just to see how they see life. And so my priorities had shifted, because now the pain that my family was going through, I recognized, because this was the darkness as well. So that I had been through at several points in my life. And so for me, I was understanding that I'm creating something that I felt in myself, if that makes sense. And I felt their pain and I felt their suffering, and I needed to be there for them. So my shifting changed to, now I got to be a better man every day. I have to create a more trusting environment again. I have to bring my kids back to me, because they didn't even want to talk to me, let alone share relationships or ask me for advice or any of that stuff. So my priorities did a huge shift from, I need to accomplish this, I need to show the world this, I need to make money, I need to do all of these things. Sure, there's some of that stuff I need to do, but it was very clear to me that my family was the most important thing. So if my family is the most important thing, time with my family has to be priority. And not just the old guy, snapping and stressed and those types of things. I had to find who I was and be loving and gentle and free, from all of that external stuff that was stressing me out. So yeah, I mean, it's interesting. Priorities do change. Yours is very different from mine, in the sense that you don't have the family, and you don't have the struggles of maybe prioritizing your time to spend it with family. But that time for me was to work on myself more so than it was to spend time necessarily with them right away. I needed to learn how to be a better man, and that took a lot. And I had a long way to go to earn that trust back with my kids, if that makes sense.
It could be a very dangerous thing and also a great thing, the kind of freedom of being just a young person has. There's a lot of time in the lacking of responsibilities to either be productive, disciplined, or to just kind of fuck off a little bit. But from hearing you speak, you're talking about the shift of priorities of basically like, okay, like priority used to be work, now it's family. There was a shifting, and you had this realization that this started with you, this effect that you're having on your family. You're ingesting this negative stuff, feeding your mind this negative stuff, and it's replicating into your reality and into your surroundings with your people. You and I both really value mindfulness, and I think we both see a lot of the self-care benefits it has to it. What kind of things did you adopt and things that you started dedicating your time to when you did encounter the shift?
Um, a lot. A lot of it we talked about on the last podcast was the kind of the external things that I was doing to myself, the alcohol, the smoking, those bad things. I'm sorry, we've got some noise here, but those external things I had to pay attention to, right? So I had to understand what caused my anxiety, what caused my stress, what caused me to be somebody that I didn't want to be. And it became very clear to me that it was simple. It was so simple that it was confusing. It was simple. You got to stop kicking the dog. You got to stop kicking your family. It was a pattern, right? It was like, okay, I'm stressed here, and my reactions are coming here to whoever's around me. And that's irritation, that's anxiety, that's stress about the future, regret about something maybe I did in the past. And that puts you in a very bad place. So trying to understand that, what that meant for me, I had to start taking care of myself. So understanding those external things that were having an impact on me and my environment, those were easy. Like we talked about, it was like, okay, if I'm drinking, I have a certain reaction to the world. I also am stressed during the day and I'm drinking at night. So how are my kids going to actually spend time with me? Right? I'm coming home and I'm numbing the pain from my stress all day. And so I had to figure that out first and foremost. As my brain started to heal, then I started to understand, okay, I got to implement some things in my life. And we share this all the time in the clinic now about self-love. That unconditional love, that I had that moment was God telling me that I forgive you, bro. I forgive you for everything, but now I'm showing you very clearly what you have to do going forward, and that's not to kick your family. So I had to figure out how not to be anxious, not to be angry, not to be stressed, so that I could be a better man for my family. And that included mindfulness, understanding my thoughts, understanding that I probably am undiagnosed ADD at minimum, where my mind goes everywhere. But I had to understand how I can manage that, what thoughts were, why I would stay in thoughts constantly, why those thoughts came with emotions, how they came with emotions when I would think about them. So there was a lot of things that made me realize that I need to get control of this. I have to understand that, why can't I just sit here and be happy? Why do I have to be always something on my mind? So that I had to change the way I ate. I had to change the way that I lived. I had to change the way that I exercised and physical. Now I wasn't about my ego, so I was going to exercise for health. I have a bad back, so it's going to be a bad hip. So I have to do things that are going to make me feel better every day, because my kids want a happy dad, one that's goofy and fun and that's having a great time, not one that's always behind the computer stressed out. They want a dad that's actually there and we can actually have a real conversation. So it starts with me, that self-love, and understanding that that self-love means that I just have to have my balance, so I'm not reactionary ever. It's never okay to be in that state. And we realize that you push your family away from you when you snap at them. You do it continuously all the time, they're not going to want to come to you with their problems. They're not going to come to you with opinions. When you ask them, what do you want to do tonight? It's up to you, whatever you want. You shut down that communication unintentionally. I don't mean to.
Yeah, it's definitely beneficial for the group to have everybody be honest and transparent like that. And so, yeah, I think there's just, it's just so important what you're talking about, just that understanding, that awareness, that mindfulness of just how we operate, what's going on. Because our reality, our individual worlds, our subjective experience that we're living in is almost fully determined on what's going on with us and what effect we have on that and our relationship with the outside and in. And so it's funny, man. There's a lot of niche sciences out there. There's a lot of fun little sciences people like to get into. They like this stuff right here. They like computers, they like coding, they like firewalls, all this stuff. There's space exploration. People are trying to hop onto Mars, live there. What's in the ocean? We don't know. Past a certain depth, we haven't been there. There's a lot of things on the outside we could study, but I think genuinely the most underrated science out there is self-exploration, because something as complex and intricate and mystical as emotion and emotional body is just an experience, an adventure you take completely on your own. You could read about other stuff and other people's experiences. You could hear other people's stories to get an idea of feelings and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, self-exploration is the most underrated science, and it has heaps of benefits the more knowledge you get on it. And so with time management and priorities and stuff like that, I realized upon working at residential recovery, that was my first take on recovery culture in general and groups and stuff like that. And learning that connection is the antidote to addiction, I realized how important this was to my life and everybody else's life. And some time ago, about a year and a half ago, I was like, all right, this is my priority now. I'm going to prioritize spending time with people, because that is the best for me. That is what's going to be good for my well-being. I'm going to make sure the people I am spending time with are good for me. They're filling my cup and this and that. And it's funny, when I had that shift in values, when I had that shift in priorities, it makes so much sense, the kind of stuff I do nowadays. The holidays and towards the end of the holidays and this year, early in January, I realized that, wow, outside of work, a majority of my time is spending time with people. And it got to a point where I was like, okay, maybe I need to reestablish some balance, because I was missing out on spending that intimate time with myself. I had books that I was stacking up that I needed to read, and I wanted to write some things that were on my mind and do stuff like this, record videos and talk about stuff. And so it is a never-ending experience getting a mastery of priorities and time management. But the more time I get and the more I understand how these things affect my well-being, the better I get at it. And I used to think that, kind of similar to you, I used to think that, oh, if I have this problem and I have this problem, I could easily solve this by just working more. I'll get 2 jobs. It was like, oh, I don't have a girlfriend, I want a girlfriend. Well, maybe if I had money, chicks would like me. Bust my ass, work 2 jobs. And it's like, if I'm putting it in like 60, 70 hours of work a week, how much time do I really have for a date, realistically, if I do meet somebody? Right. And so I realized that putting all my time and energy into work wasn't going to solve my problems. Money wasn't going to solve all my problems. And something important too was spending time with people. But getting out of my addiction and into my recovery, it was a lot of just shifting and trading bad old patterns of behavior for new patterns of behavior, to where I'm just practicing more meditation, and I'm doing stuff for my brain rather than waking up and just immediately looking at Instagram. Because I feel like that is similar to what you're saying about focusing on external things. When I wake up and I start my day and I'm looking at my phone, I'm looking at notifications and emails, and I'm looking at social media, I'm starting my day for other people. I'm starting my day for an outside source, and my behavior is determined on notifications rather than me waking up. And if I have a day off and I'm just like, okay, like, what do I want to do today? What would be a good use of my time? And I think, if there was a Caffeine Anonymous, I would earn my 10-day chip at this point. I'm very sensitive to life at this moment. I'm not doing really much of any drugs, and I'm high on life. But it was insane to see and realize that this error of thought that I had, to where I thought the way I felt was always because of how I was taking care of my body, how well I was working out, how much food I was eating, if I was eating too much or not enough, or if it was bad for me. I was like, oh, I feel this way because of that. But I realized so much of my self esteem was based on me wanting to do things, me little battles throughout the day, and me failing those battles and it bringing me down so much. And yesterday, I've been saying that I want to initiate more conversations with people and talk to more people. And yesterday, I was at the park and I was having a good time just being outside, doing some self care in that sense, connecting with nature, looking at ducks and stuff at Wash Park. But I was like, you know what? I should actually do this. I should challenge myself. And I tried initiating conversations, and I realized that it was a lot of initiating and not actually having conversations, because a lot of people just don't want to talk. A lot of people don't have the
Right.
time of day. But the amount that uplifted my spirit, that I actually tried and that I actually did what I was talking about doing, had such a positive impact on my self esteem. And so I think probably a high priority of mine and a very good use of my time is just doing things that involve my growth, doing things that get me out of my comfort zone, because they make me feel a lot better about myself.
Yeah, for sure. I think that that's why I'm such a nerd when it comes to mental health and understanding this stuff, because I'm that same way in a lot of respects, is that I want to focus my energy because I have a lot of energy. I do have a lot of thoughts going through my head. And it's what those thoughts are that almost killed me. Versus, now those thoughts are very different. They're more positive. But that comes with understanding this time and priorities in our lives, because just like you mentioned, working at residential, that is a job that doesn't necessarily pay great, but they offer as many hours pretty much as you can put in. And it's a 24-hour facility. So they always need help. They always need people to fill in. So you can make pretty good money. You're just going to have to give up a lot of your time. And that's what I realized in my recovery, is time is the most important piece. um my recovery from life is what I'm talking about, right? Time is very important to me now. My time with myself is very important to me. It's my writing time. It's my reflection time. It's how I process things, throughout the day, how things have gone. I'm just taking care of myself in that way. But when you look at like where I started off at residential, because I was a project manager, program manager, I ran programs very similar to the program that we work at. It wasn't on the medical side, is the only difference, but a program is a program, right? You got staff, you got all of these, the funding, the budgets, and so there's a lot that goes into that. And then running that place on a daily basis is tough. It is tough because you've got 15 clients at any given time. They're all emotionally up and down. Some of them are going through withdrawal, some of them are doing better. And you have people with needs. So you are wanting to help and you care. So you want to do the best you can while you're there to help them. And you find yourself just investing more and more time into this, which is amazing because it's more purpose than I ever had before. In corporate, I was just doing it for the money, for them and for me. Whereas now I had purpose, I was helping people, but at the same time, was I helping myself? Because I started becoming shift coordinator. I started, because I could run programs and I have in the past, I started doing it. And I'm like, oh, we're going to make this the best program in the world, and we're going to do, I'm going to fill this gap and fix this and fix this. And that's the old me coming back. I recognized that. I recognized that when I went home, that quality time and those hours were getting less and less, and they were getting less and less quality. And so I was in my head, I was thinking about work again. And here I am, running this old program again, in that I've got purpose. So I'm going to put my heart and soul into this, when that's not what that clarity that came to me. That clarity that came to me is you need to calm your shit down. You need to balance your life, and job be damned. You have to be there, or you have to be there mentally, or you can't be there for anybody, including the people that you're trying to help there. So if I'm there and I'm stressed all day trying to get all this shit done, now all of a sudden I'm not able to connect with the people that are there, because I'm barking again. You got to get this done, got to get that done, and they don't feel that connection. And then at home, I'm coming home and I'm thinking about all of this stuff, and I'm not there. I'm trying my best, not to kick the dog and not to do those things, transfer that stress onto my family. But it's there again. Here it is again. And I'm like, oh, no, 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 no. Zoop. Job be damned, right? I'm like, I went to leadership and I says, hey, I need to get back up to what I love to do, and that's the peer support and being out there with the clients and waking up and going out there and going and spending time, real time, and connecting again. And that's what I love to do. And that's why I made this whole shift. And I shouldn't be taking that stuff home with me. I have to have time to process things myself. I have to love myself and take care of myself so that I am not this mess again. I don't want those old programs to come back, and they can, it's just that awareness. So I switched, and now I moved into the case management job, which is stressful again, but I did it for purpose again, right? It's like, okay, well, I saw that maybe people could use better resources when they leave. This could be done better. I didn't want people to learn so much at the clinic and then not have a fighting chance when they left. So I really was interested in helping, and then connecting with sober living and the contacts and the network and stuff. It's been great. But now I'm paying attention again. How much of this is taking me away from being in the moment, with my family, because it just is not worth it, and it can't be that way for me anymore.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, I mean, a job is just, it's a trade. It is an economic trade, and it is an exchange of us giving some energy and some time in the form of work and getting something out of it. The monetary value in that is just, we get money for the amount of hours we put in. But it gets a little deeper with the energy thing, because if people are in a situation similar to what you were describing, of where it's like they're just going, 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 and working, 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 and their energy levels are just getting depleted and they're running on empty, is it really worth the money? I think about when I was shift coordinating, and it seems like working 3 days a week, oh, it's not going to be that bad, right? Like I could handle this. And it was a lot of just go, go, go. Like I would not sit, and it was work all the time. And I would need the next day off to simply recover. I'd be in a fetal position. I'd be like, I would just be pooped. My gas tank would be on empty. And so there is a balance there, and there is a balance of how much energy am I giving to get what I want out of it. And I think what we all desire as humans to get out of a job is some kind of fulfillment. We want to feel worth, we want to feel utilized, we want to feel important in some way. And I think any kind of job can give you that, but also I think the icing on the cake, and the thing that we get a lot of working in social work, is just the connection we get with other human beings. When I was working at King Supers, and I'm sure other people like working at somewhere like Home Depot or like Ace Hardware, like other retail jobs like that, like a lot of the best parts of the job are just kind of bullshitting with people. Just like, oh, like you're looking for this. What's your project? Like, oh, I eat this too. Like, da 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 da. Like, oh, you have a dog. That's fun. And it's so pleasant, and it's so wholesome, and it's this heart to heart, just like soul connection we have with people. On a spiritual note, and on an exchanging note, it's a universal law that you get back what you give. And I remember when I was working at King Supers, I got a lot of joy out of purchasing bananas, purchasing banana bread mix, creating a concoction of banana bread and giving it to my people at my job. It was so good and it was so wholesome to me. And I loved that aspect of my job. And the craziest thing happened. I was talking to this guy. He was like, yo, where are the jalapenos at? Where's the corn at? I'm like, they're over here. They're over in this area. And we just get to talking. Like, he was asking me where I was from. And I was like, I'm from Texas. He's like, no way. I went to school down there. And we had a 15, 20-minute conversation. And I was like, so what are you making with these jalapenos and this corn and stuff? He's like, I'm making jalapeno cornbread. He's like, I'm going to bring you some, man. I'm going to bring you some. And it brought me so much joy when he brought in this bread. And I had this like moment where I was like, oh shit, I made banana bread. I gave that out to the universe. Homeboy got some divine communication about this jalapeno bread and it made its way to me. Not going to lie, it was kind of stale. But regardless of that, it was the best experience of eating any kind of bread I ever had because I was like, this guy made this with the intention of giving it to me. And it was so great. And so I think if you're working a job and you're putting in energy and you're only getting out money and your gas tank's depleted, it's not worth working it. If you're not feeling good about yourself, if you're not feeling important, significant, utilized, and if you're not feeling like you're helping people or connecting with others at that job, it's got to be running you into the dirt, like it's got to be tough.
It's got to be real. And and that's where I started to understand a little bit more about like where abundance comes from. It's like I didn't realize, I thought I had to go out and make a lot of money, spend a lot of time and make as much of that money as I possibly could to bring my family abundance. But what the truth of it is that the more you treat people with that kindness that we talk about, and you listen and you're there for them from a human aspect, you make that connection that you're talking about and you're there for each other. And that time now becomes way more valuable to both parties than any money or anything coming in, anything you can buy. And so when you give somebody your time and you actually listen and you help them or they help you, especially if you help them see things for themselves that help to better themselves, when they start to see things for themselves, they're like, oh man, you know what? I connect with him. I connect with her because they shared something with me in their own life that connected with my life, and I'm not alone. And you said that in the last podcast, I remember, is that's the connection, is that I don't feel alone anymore. I feel like I'm with somebody. When you have that connection and you build that, now you feel like you'll do anything for that person, and it's not just the physical stuff. I mean, I can go and help somebody move, but it's really the time, that you spend with them to help them with whatever they're struggling with, really struggling with, besides this, beyond this face that they're putting in front of you. And so that takes time, and that was what I realized with Atmosphere and creating this community of folks that understood that, and it's a daily struggle to not let those old patterns come back. And we have to work on it every day, and we have to have that connection more and more, and we need more of us, not less of us, that are trying to help each other in that way and listen to each other. It's very different than going to a job, getting rewarded and getting a paycheck. I have to do that to a certain extent right now, but that's the process of seeing it for what it is and understanding that, yeah, it impacts me too much if I dedicate all of my time, all of my effort, all of everything there. It takes me away from the important priorities that Morgan asked us to talk about, right? It's understanding what that is for me and not letting anything impact that priority, at least the growth of that. For me, it was the healing of my family. So anything external that was getting in the way of that, I had to put boundaries and understand that we have a lot of trust to rebuild within our own family And that's going to take time. So I can no longer be externally driven for money and success. And then what I didn't realize is as you start to open your heart and you start to share why you are the way you are to your own family, and you start to share, this is why I've probably been reactionary and I'm working on it, it changes and you start to rebuild that slowly. Those connections with your own family, which you thought you were doing a pretty good job at in the first place. So every day it's that journey of trying to do better every day. So what does that mean for me? It means that I can't let those external things impact me anymore, so that I can be there. So it's hyper awareness almost, if you will. It's like, okay, how did I come home from the day to day? Am I still thinking about the day that I had at work, or am I chill? Am I here? Does my family want to talk, or is everybody just bang right on their phones, or watching TV, or isolating in their rooms like we used to be? you know I want a family that's going to support each other more so than what I was building before. And when I saw my family more so being toxic and fighting with each other and not wanting to leave their rooms, and just constantly arguing and joking, passive aggressive joking, and all of that stuff, you start to see what a toxic family is and what I was creating. So my priority is to not be that core of the toxicity, not kick the dog. I don't call my family dogs, but that's how simple it was for me, is understanding that I can't take those stresses home. And if I'm not capable of doing that in this world, in this environment, this project management world, corporate world, then I've got to change that for myself so that I can be there. It is that understanding of yourself and that awareness, that spiritual crisis that, we talk about, that, it just gave some clarity to me, that I need to prioritize what's important in life, because if I'm there for my kids and they're there and we can walk this journey together, it's a very different path, than trying to tell my kids how to live their lives. And I think us as parents have disconnected from that, because that's how we're taught to raise our kids.
Time with people. Two words come to mind after hearing that. What you just said. There's definitely a lot of investment and intention with spending time with people. I remember probably one of the worst dates I've ever been on. I went to this Black Bear diner in Colorado Springs with this girl, and we got our food and I was with her, and she was looking at her phone when I was spending time with her. And it sucked. It was so bad. And I also reflect on this time that I spent with some people over the holidays, and it got to a point where it was very somber. Like a lot of the time there's like kids running around in the house and it's just like chaotic and there's chaos, but we were about to do a white elephant and we just sat down and we had this moment to kind of like commemorate the passing of the grandfather in the family. And there was this intention of just like, we're going to talk about this and it's going to be serious. And it was very emotionally engaging for people. And the amount I got out of that time was so much higher value than somebody who didn't even want to like look at me, who wanted to look at their phone. And so there's a lot of intention with that time with people, but at the end of the day, like time is all we got, and that's what we invest in. And those investments reap benefits and come back to us. Reflecting on my time here in Denver and what I want to change for the future, I feel like I did a poor job of this. I did a poor job of investing my time into communities specifically. And it was with consistency. I wasn't consistent weekly with going to a certain place. Every now and then when I go to the Dive, that open gym volleyball place, I always re-meet new people because I go there maybe every other month. I don't go there consistently. But in hindsight, a lot of the people there all know each other because they go there weekly, maybe twice a week. And it's the same thing with any kind of community. the more you invest time in those people, those familiar faces, the more you invest in your family members and people close to you, the deeper of a connection, the more intimate of a connection you're going to get with people over time.
Yeah.
And so, um, to transition, I think a lot of the way I hear and see signs and the way I process things spiritually and the way I have prayers answered is a lot of the time I think God works through people, and I think God speaks to me through people, and I see signs and synchronicities throughout that. And so maybe we could talk about that for the last little bit we got here. But I guess, George, how would you define your higher power? What is that to you?
It's interesting in our world in recovery circles, we talk about the higher power. Having a higher power, it's in 12 steps. I think it's, I don't know if this is going to come out right, but during a very tough time in my life where I really needed to find that grit within me to not drink, my family was my higher power. Promise to my daughter was my higher power, that I was going to quit drinking. And that was the thing that constantly replayed in my head if I were to relapse. So that at that time was my higher power, if you will. It pulled me out of a very dark place long enough to really start learning what I'm learning now. It wasn't all over, once you start to, quit drinking and you start to do better, you don't realize that you have a long way to go. And if you really want to heal your family. And so my higher power pulled me out of that darkness, and that was my higher power. You could say God was behind that or whatever. When I had this kind of more moment of clarity, we've talked about, it's like it shifted from me from external to internal. I had to stop blaming the world. I had to work on myself to create a better environment. It was very clear that I couldn't change anybody. I couldn't change my family. I couldn't change addiction in my family. I couldn't change the way that people think. I can't change who they are or how they're reacting to life. What you have to do is work on yourself so you can show a better version of yourself, so that they'll want to come back and they'll build that trust back, and they'll want to spend time with me. So not understanding that, having that clarity of understanding I can't change people. I used to be a know-it-all, right? I thought I had to show my kids that I knew how life worked so they would be comfortable underneath me. I had opinions on this, I had opinions on that, I had belief systems, and all of that I realized came from fear because I didn't know shit, when it came to life. And my family was falling apart. They were struggling emotionally. They were struggling with their own social anxieties and those types of things. And instead of being a dad that was there to support them and help to understand what's going on with them, I was the dad that was telling them not to be that way, and they need to act a different way, and there's that disconnect, and so I had to learn to be different and understand that I could only work on myself. That's the only way that I have an impact on my environment. I can't fix things externally. I can't change my son or change my wife or change my daughter. I can't change those things. I can only be a better version of myself and work on it every day. So I'm that peaceful, loving guy. And that meant that I had to make some real changes in my life. So at that core, I think it's that unconditional love that God or my higher power shared with me that day, that he is unconditional love or she is unconditional love, um, and that I was not treating my kids with unconditional love, which meant that I was still judging them. I was still irritated with them. When they made a decision that I didn't like, I would get mad, or I would get, I would have to voice my opinion. And that's very different. It's a very different way to live, because now you recognize that my kids are my kids, and everybody thinks differently. And so they have emotions tied to that. And I created kind of a toxic environment. And to fix that, I had to be the kinder, gentler dad, which I had to find myself to do that outside of all this stress and all this anxiety and all this bullshit that was all external for me. I had to find myself. Who am I outside of all this? Oh shit. I am loving. I am caring. I do have such empathy for people. And that took me to a place where I had to start changing my life. I had to change my job. I had to show that this caring side of me, I wanted to give back. I wanted to help people see what I'm seeing now for myself. And it's a tough journey, but it's just one thing. It's me. I have to keep working on me. So that's where I ended up, is just like, okay, well, all these external things are very low priority to the time that I spend and the time that I spend to work on myself. That's got to be priority. And if I can do other things, I've got to make money. I've got to make a certain amount of money to pay my bills. But connection is everything for me. And so the things that take me away from being able to connect with people mentally or physically are very, very important to me now. And that's just my priority now.
Yeah, I think you and I do have a pretty similar outlook on what a higher power or God or whatever you want to call it is. We could call it spirit, but I think with you considering your family being your higher power, especially at that time of desperation, it's a lot of expansive awareness in the sense that it's not just I'm seeing through here, but if I'm getting other people's perspectives, it's expansive. And I think at the end of the day, all God is consciousness. And we, as individual human beings and other life forms like animals and stuff like that, we're all little pieces of spirit and we're all little pieces of consciousness. And all together, we are that omnipotence, that all consciousness. And so connecting with that and connecting with other people is just life experience and just the beauty of life. And people say it feels good to help others. And some people can take that information and go, oh, well, that's selfish if you're just helping other people for the sake of you feeling better. When in reality, I feel like in a way, I'm helping myself because I'm helping spirit. My spirit, my soul is touching somebody else's. And so as a whole, we're getting brought up. They feel good, I feel good. And even if there's a third party involved, studies show that if there's a third party involved of somebody helping out somebody else, they even feel good too. They like that. And so there's stuff that could get in the way of that, like you were saying, external stuff and self-serving stuff.
Mm-hmm.
We got different layers of ego. We got id, ego, and super ego. And I think that super ego is that part of us that has that desire to be a better person, to be a better human being and strive for more and help others and be a good-hearted person. And so ego could get in the way of that, of self-comparison, of competing with other people, of wanting to one up other people and basically just serve ourselves. And so it is a sacrifice investing in others. It is a sacrifice of taking something that we like and we enjoy and giving it up with hope and with faith that things are going to get better in the future. And so I think at the end of the day, too, this relates, all encompasses to addiction as well, because I think that you reap tremendous internal benefits when you don't self-soothe, when you have that urge or that tendency, or you're struggling and you're going through it and you refrain, you delay that gratification of taking a drink or taking a hit at this or that or whatever for the instantaneous relief. Yeah. Delaying that gratification, I think, is what spirit is all about. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of ways that life can teach us through that struggle, can teach us about ourselves and can teach us resiliency and strength. And Yeah.
Yeah, I think that one thing is that I realized is that making that connection is very difficult when you are trying to show somebody something, you're trying to tell somebody something. For me, it was like I had to understand that I thought I knew it all. I thought I was a know-it-all, and it's a hard thing to recognize in yourself. In that, now I've got to um, out of raising my family or building my family, I had to show them, a certain way of living in this world. And I thought that that meant, I had to have certain belief systems, I had to have certain opinions, and I had to show them, what that was, and where my belief systems and um, where all of that came from, my opinions and stuff, came from my whole life, life experiences and maybe trauma that I've been through and fears that I've instilled in my life, and now you're like getting this clarity of saying, well, those things, those belief systems that I thought were so important to share with my kids and tell them that this is how you have to live, they all just kind of went, they're all gone now because I'm looking at my family in a different way and I'm saying, okay, I created a toxic environment. How do I fix this? And I look at myself and my involvement in it, and my involvement in it is the core. It's the core as the parent, right? My kids are coming home every day from school or from a day's work, and am I loving and connected, or am I yelling at them? Am I barking at them? Am I, telling them that, getting mad at them for missing a class, or whatever, not doing their homework and those types of things. So I realized that that's a lot of the reason why they don't want to talk to me. And if you have teenagers that aren't talking to you, take a look at yourself. It's not terrible teens. It's that you're losing that connection with them. They trust you, up to a certain extent. You're their hero. But when they start seeing you live in your life not as you're telling them to live, you become a preacher, and now you're telling them what to do, and you're not living it. Um, so to me, it was like I understood more now about belief systems and opinions. And I had to work on those things for myself because I realized that every belief system and every opinion that I had, if my kids didn't see it the way I saw it, it pushed them away from me. So every time I came at them again, you need to get a job, you need to do this, you need to do that, every single time, right? Every single time. Do your homework, get this done, get a job, all of this stuff. And it's just pushing them, pushing them, pushing them. And we wonder why, and especially if I'm drinking and if I'm smoking, I'm not living a life that I'm telling them to live. Then of course, you're going to get that conflict with your kids. So understanding and breaking down my belief systems was huge for me, and that's where the healing starts in families. I believe is that I had to surrender to everything, say I don't know anything, man, help me, and so surrendering to all of that included thinking that I knew who God was, what success was, how to raise a family, all of those things. I had to lay on my sword and say, God, if you're there, I need help, and that's that surrender we talk about in the clinic a lot now. That's why I'm there. If people are at that point and they're ready to surrender and say, man, I have hit the lowest of lows, my family's fallen apart, I need help. Boom, that's where the healing begins. And you start to realize the way that I used to be probably came from a lot of trauma, kind of came from a lot of things. Now I'm seeing it. I'm waking up and I'm seeing it more clearly. And it starts with me. And I have to shift from externally blaming the world, externally trying to fix the problem, to internally trying to work on myself, my anxiety, bring it down, try to be more peaceful and loving so that my kids will want to talk with me, and then also that I can engage with them and understand what's going on in their life. If you're asking your teenage kid, how was school today? And they're like, good, fine, good, fine. That's leave me alone is what it is, and breaking that down is very difficult because you got to understand why, see it from their eyes. And so that really makes a huge change in you personally. So it didn't say that I had to go to a certain church or I had to believe in something else, or I had to, do something externally to show my kids. This is all just working on myself. And yeah, those external things have an impact on me, but they're all pretty much, a lot of them are negative. So those external things, I got to bring down that focus of those external rewards and money and all of those things to bring it back down. So it's that it comes back to that awareness. But I'm just grateful that in my recovery, I have some clarity, and that brought me to the awareness of trying to be better just every day. Like I said this morning, I woke up this morning and it's like my head was kind of buzzing about work because I've been sick and I haven't been there the last couple of days. And so where's my head? Is it here? Am I writing and am I enjoying the moment with my family? Are we doing puzzles? Are we writing, drawing? Are we doing those fun things? Are we going outside and getting exercise together? Or, am I stressed out, sitting here and nobody wants to talk to me? So a lot there. Sorry, I kind of went on a soapbox there, but I wanted to get that in before we have to cut out.
No, it was good. Yeah, just to wrap up, nobody wants to be told what to do. And I think it's good with anybody, kids or mentees, clients, anything like that, that therapeutic approach of, well, have you tried this? What would this look like? And these questions, getting people thinking.
Yeah.
Other times too, you talked about surrender. There are times where it's like, oh shit, like I don't know what I'm doing. I need answers. And that's when people are most open and they're the ones asking questions and they're like, what do you think about this? In times of desperation, kids are going to go to their parents and they're going to be like, look, like I have no answers, like you've done more life than me. Like, what do you think about this? Like, what should I do here? And so those times will come up. We can't always control and we can't always tell people what to do, but there are going to be times where people are really open to having a good and wholesome conversation and they're receptive to information.
Yeah, that openness is what I've now found in myself, right? As those belief systems and those opinions and that thinking I have to know is dwindling. And now it's more, I can learn from anybody. If I don't have that shell around me and I'm not like, I'm better than you, or you don't know shit, or you're younger than me, or whatever that is, those are the things that get in the way of connection. And now seeing that, I realize that now, as I could learn from anybody and everybody. What I need to do is open my mind up to everything and everybody. And now all of a sudden it's like, that makes sense to me, that doesn't make sense to me, that clicks with me, that doesn't click with me. And it's just like I can go from a spiritual leader to a scientist to a neuro surgeon, or anybody, because if it connects, if it makes sense, it makes sense. And it's like, oh shit, okay, that's what the ego is, that's what I got to work on. So it just depends, but opening your mind up to all of it, the world, and busting through those belief systems, those opinions, and those hard ways of being, to allow people in. And it's magical.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, George. And also thank you everybody for watching. This has been a blast. Adios, man. Thank you. Peace.
Take care.